Hey there, my name is Portia Lori. Welcome back to my YouTube channel. Today I'm back with a very special episode. It's a special episode because this topic is near and dear to my heart. You already noticed by the title or by this lovely sign that I've added to my background. Today I'm talking to you all about Degrassi. Degrassi, if you don't already know, is a long-running television show from Canada, and it's all about teens and dealing with growing up. They broke a lot of ground in how they talked about these topics and how many kids really related to these characters. I'm going to be talking about some of my favorite moments, some of my favorite episodes, and maybe give you a little behind the scenes of some things you may or may not know about Degrassi. If this sounds like fun to you, I need you to do me a solid and drop a like on this video, then run over to that subscribe button and hit that bell next to it, because then you'll be notified every time I upload. So right now, as I'm filming this, we are in the middle of the pandemic, washing our hands a lot. As a result of this, my hands are so dry. So if you catch an up-close look at my hands, I don't want to hear anything in the comments. So one of my favorite things that I've always really enjoyed about Degrassi, the fashion. And something that I thought was really interesting that I learned while I was doing some research about Degrassi is mainly in the first couple seasons, they actually had the actors wear their own personal clothing and makeup and do their own hair and stuff because it allowed the kids to look like kids. That's why I always felt like Degrassi was like watching a real high school. If you've watched my About Me, then you might know that I was homeschooled as a kid. So when I watched shows like this, I really imagined that I was kind of there. It was really fun to watch the show as it went on because I grew up with all the characters. The first season came out, I believe, in 2001, 2002, and that was the same year that I started 7th grade. Emma and her circle of friends were the same age as me as when I started watching the show, and so it was fun because by the time I graduated, you know, they were graduating too. It felt like we were all kind of in this together. Degrassi is actually a very long-running television show, which I forgot to mention that. I'm talking about Degrassi The Next Generation. I'm not going to be talking about every single version of Degrassi. This is the only one I'm really super familiar with. Degrassi The Next Generation got started is because Emma is the daughter of a kid that was on the original show. On the original show, her mom, Spike, got pregnant in high school and actually had a teen pregnancy where she ended up keeping Emma. So Emma is from the original, and she's what starts us off on our journey of Degrassi The Next Generation. Also, Craig lives with Joey, who is his stepdad, and Joey is also a member of the original Degrassi junior high or high school. Also, along with Mr. Radich, who's the principal, we're all in the original cast, and that's what kind of makes them all interconnected. It's not just like they took the name of the show and like redid it. They literally just kept the storyline going. It all filters through the same high school, but they're all different experiences, different characters. So since we're kind of talking about the history of Degrassi, I feel like the first thing I really want to talk about is Emma. This show starts off with a bang. The very first episode is about Emma almost getting abducted by someone online, by someone essentially catfishing her before catfish was even a term that we were familiar with. Looking back now, I can see why my mom wanted to watch that with me because I was these kids' ages. I remember this was the same year that I got my own computer in my room. So it's so interesting to look back at this because now I'm like, oh wow, I see all these warning signs. But I remember watching it as a kid and being like, what's gonna happen next? What do you mean he's not also a kid like Emma? Who is this adult? What's gonna happen? And now I'm like, as an adult, I'm like, wow, this is the scariest thing I've ever seen in my life. That's the thing about Degrassi. Like, they really dealt with these topics head on, and they were topics that were literally happening at that time. So I mentioned when I was talking about Emma that the first episode of the first season was actually named Father Figure. If you notice, there's a pattern to all of this. You'll notice in Degrassi The Next Generation, all the episodes are named after 80s songs, which I think is super fun. In the later episodes of The Next Generation and then Degrassi Next Class, those episodes are in the 90s. Now, one thing about Degrassi is that because it's been running for so long, there are a lot of characters that kind of come in and come out, and especially in the first couple seasons, you can definitely tell that there's some characters they were trying to try out and later on just ultimately didn't end up working out. One of the ones though that makes the biggest impression on me, Spinner in season 1 and 2 and maybe even 3 has a younger adopted sister named Kendra, and actually Kendra and Toby end up dating for a while. And then At some point, Kendra just disappears. And there goes basically Toby's only love interest in like the whole show. And it's very frustrating. Another character that I noticed just disappeared off the face of the planet is Derek, Liberty's little brother's best friend, Derek. He's in quite a few episodes, but he's always just kind of like a side character. He does have some intricate storylines that weave in with other characters. An episode where he confronts Liberty about the fact that she's given up her son for adoption because he is also adopted, and so he wants to understand her mindset so he can understand a little bit more about himself and his own situation. And then he just disappears. It's interesting because most other characters do get some type of reprieve. Like, we do find out at some point what's happened to them. For example, Terry. Terry leaves town essentially after Rick put her in the hospital. And so it's not really misunderstood as to why she stopped appearing on the show. It made sense with the storyline. They wrote her character out. Also, sidebar, if you guys watch the I'm Upset music video, you know Drake was on Degrassi. But in his I'm Upset video, it's basically an ode to Degrassi. It's like a reunion of the characters, and it's magnificent. And you'll notice that Terry is also in that video. And what I love about catching up with all of these characters is it made me go out and catch up with them in real life. And she actually really did become a model. That was actually one of her storylines on the show, is that she was doing plus size modeling, but she was feeling really insecure about it, and she was being body shamed. But then ultimately in that episode, she also was able to raise herself up and be like, yeah, I am a plus size model, and what? And I just love that she actually in real life became a model. Okay, so like for real, my favorite thing about Degrassi, the couples, the couple names, the hookups, like all the drama around that, like that obviously is my favorite. I'm a rom-com, dramedy, romantic, like hardcore. Definitely when I'm like reading or watching things, I love a good romance. But when I was a kid, I remember Radio Free Roscoe was like the other one I was super into. And does anyone remember South of Nowhere? That was my favorite. Oh my god, the fact that that show only lasted like 2 or 3 seasons sucks. It was one of my favorite shows. But also Degrassi, where people would talk about episodes, talk about future episodes, a lot of fan fiction. And yeah, I remember that was just like one of the biggest things I was into. It was like talking about Degrassi with other people. It's where I figured out that I was like, oh, like really into pop culture. The thing I remember the most is like ship names became a thing. So I'm gonna flash some of my favorite couples on screen. Craggle, was it Craggle? Like Craig and Ellie, but like they never actually dated. They like kissed a few times, and like she had a major crush on him, but like they never actually happened. Spanny was just super weird. Like Spinner and Manny should never have dated. They were just dating each other just to like date each other. I don't know. That was a weird relationship for me. Crashly, probably the single most like, what's the word I'm looking for? Dysfunctional or like toxic relationship. I mean, I guess Cranny would also be pretty toxic. Jashly, which was like a long running on again, off again. I think in total times they dated 3. Yeah, they dated 3 different times. So when we first meet Jimmy and Ashley, they were dating in like the first season. They had dated before we even met them. And then they broke up in Jagged Little Pill, only to get back together in Dressed in Black when Ashley was like a super goth, and somehow her and Jimmy rekindled their romance. Jimmy was finding it really hard to relate to Ashley. Ashley wasn't the same girl that he knew in 8th grade. She had really changed at that point. They got back together, but then also broke up in the same episode. But after Jimmy's accident and after Ashley moves back from being in London for a while, they end up rekindling their romance right around the time that the first class graduates. Also, there was Palix, which I completely forgot about this relationship, but what a fun, interesting time that was. I actually really liked Paige and Alex's relationship. It forced Paige to really go out of her comfort zone, and I don't know, it was just kind of like a fun, interesting arc for the show. I also want to say that's like the first openly lesbian couple that they've displayed on the show. Something really interesting I like about the character Marco is that the real actor Adamo Ruggiero, I'm really sorry if I'm butchering your name, he actually was able to find confidence in coming out of the closet in his own personal life through the character Marco. And I always loved how they portrayed the character Marco, how his coming out of the closet story was very much like a slow progression, and he had to go through a lot of obstacles and tribulations to get to a place where he was, in a safe spot, had a good group of friends. But yeah, Degrassi, everyone is ends up with everyone. There's always some big drama going on. One of the biggest storylines I think that sticks out in everyone's mind if you've watched Degrassi is the whole Craig, Ashley, Manny affair fiasco. Craig and Manny have this constant on and off relationship. At first, he tries dating Manny, but he feels like she's too young for him. And then later on, he's in a relationship with Ashley, but Ashley doesn't really want to go all the way. Manny sees this as an open opportunity to pursue him, thinking that maybe she can tear the two of them apart and she could be with Craig. And it starts this love affair. And then of course the entire situation explodes. It crushes Ashley, but ultimately Craig and Ashley are able to repair things and they begin dating again. Only for that relationship to once again end and Craig and Manny end up together. Until Craig's character is ultimately never really back on the show. And at some point Manny ends up with Jay. A couple I've never understood. I don't know why. They never gave a particular ending to them, so our assumption is they're still together. But I always wanted Manny and Craig to work out. And my last thing about the relationships, why the hell did Spinner and Emma end up together? Could they not get Sean for that movie and that's why they ended up together? Because I'm sorry, but Emma and Sean were supposed to end up together at the end. That's all I wanted. And the fact that Emma and Spinner somehow got married in one of their Degrassi movies blows my mind. Something I had no idea at the time was going to be so relatable even now in my 30s is all the mental health topics that they covered in the show. So like I said, Degrassi, it really goes there, okay? A lot of it I can't even talk to you about now on YouTube. Okay, so let's just talk about Craig for a second. I feel like his character is so important. So when we first meet Craig, it's in the beginning of season 2, When Doves Cry. He's taking photographs of Joey and his daughter Angela, who, side note, is actually real life Manny, Cassie Steele's little sister. Also, she later on plays a second character in Degrassi, which is the first time that's ever happened where the same actor has played 2 separate roles on the show. We find out in When Doves Cry is a child of an abusive father. He really wants to make a connection with his half stepsister. They used to spend a lot of time together before his mother passed away, and after his mother's death, his dad just became incredibly controlling as well as abusive to Craig. And I think it's so important because a big part of that episode is Craig being real, what it's like in his life and how much he doesn't value his own life because it's so miserable. And to see something like that from a child is so impressive. Craig really has a huge journey that never really has a stopping point. From here, he moves in with Joey, and then in Tears Are Not Enough, his father and him try to rekindle their relationship, passes away in that episode. And what that means for him in his future. Both of his biological parents are now dead, and really all he has in the world is Joey and his little sister. In Voices Carrie, Craig is going through a very strange time. He's acting really out of sorts, really up and down. He even tries to propose to Ashley, and she says no, and it spins him out of control. He becomes super depressed, and he runs away for a while. What we ultimately find out is that Craig also is bipolar, and that adds a whole nother layer to his character. And then if we cut further down, when his music career finally takes off and he has a manager and he's signed to a label, he puts out his first record, he comes home to visit Manny and Manny catches him doing a drug. So his character never stops evolving. It's I think one of the most well-written characters in the whole show. So there's a lot more mental health topics that they cover, but of course I don't have time to talk about everyone. But I don't think I can like talk about Degrassi without talking about the most important episode. I'm just gonna call it by the name of the episode because I don't want YouTube to flag this. Time stands still. Like, we can't talk about Degrassi without talking about this. Rick is this character that is bullied by the cool kids at school, and he's being bullied because he dated a girl who was one of the popular kids and he was abusive to her. He's part of a team representing Degrassi, and two bullies decide that they're going to literally tar and feather him in front of absolutely everyone. He's been pushed to his absolute breaking point, and so he decides to come back to school. He ends up injuring Jimmy. This is so important because it changes the lives of everyone involved. It changes Degrassi. They never stop mentioning how this happened. This sparked a huge arc for Jimmy as a character, and I really think it's a testament to what a good actor Aubrey Graham is. And I hope at some point, like, I love his music, don't get me wrong. He's done like making music. I really hope he considers going back to acting because I think he's incredibly talented. Andrea Lewis, who played Hazel, has actually talked about this, how there wasn't enough representation of multicultural people on the show. I would say if you watch seasons 8 and on, they did a better job of diversifying the cast and having the diverse people actually have their own storylines. But during the first 7 seasons, I would say it's kind of hit and miss. But I do think Jimmy did get a better representation post the thing that I don't want to mention on YouTube. They dealt with teen pregnancy quite a bit during the show, actually. I think the first character to deal with it is actually Manny, which, fun fact, these 2 episodes, Accidents Will Happen 1 and Part 2, were not aired initially in the US. If you watched the season as it was coming out like I did, these episodes were actually missing from it, and it's because the FCC didn't want them played. They didn't think it was an appropriate topic for that young of an audience, yada yada yada. Ultimately, they did air this episode later on during one of those Degrassi Goes Theriest or something like that. They had different characters pick their favorite episodes, and that was the episodes that Cassie Steele decided were her favorite. So if you also never got a chance to see these episodes, Degrassi has an official YouTube channel and they have every season. So like if you want to go binge Degrassi, go over there and do it. Accidents Will Happen is actually the aftermath of Craig and Manny and Ashley's big love affair blow up thing. But Manny gets sick after gymnastics practice one day, decides to take a pregnancy test and finds out that she's pregnant. Her realizing she can't tell her very strict, very conservative parents, so she goes to Emma and her mom, and even though her and Emma aren't on the greatest terms, they come together because she's going to be there for Manny for this. She also gets Craig involved. Manny decides not to go through with the pregnancy, like pushes Craig away again, although not permanently, obviously. And it pushes Emma a bit, but she also understands where her best friend is from, and if anything, it makes their bond form stronger. We also see them deal with teen pregnancy again later with the character Liberty. Really get to see the ebbs and flows of the whole pregnancy. She ultimately decides that she wants to keep it, but she is going to give it up for adoption. That's a decision that she comes to with between her and her parents, and it's a constant battle with JT because it's not ultimately what JT wanted. JT wanted the opportunity to be a parent, and he keeps kind of trying to show Liberty, but then not being able to fulfill it. He gets a job at like a CVS and tries to steal prescription drugs to then sell to make money for the baby, and that all explodes in his face, and ultimately Liberty does continue to go through with the adoption. We're introduced to a character named Mia, who is a transfer from another school named Lakehurst, a school that we'll hear about more later, and she is already a teen mom. She's not even an infant, she's like a preschool age child. So I really love that Degrassi kind of took you through any kind of scenario, shows what happens when those decisions are made. And I think it's interesting that it happened to so many different characters and in different time frames. If anything, it made me make smarter decisions because of things that I had seen. Just real quick, I think Spinner has probably the most unique character on the show. Spinner played every kind of character. You know, at one point he was a bully, he was a homophobic, a bad kid, and then he completely changed his life. He born again Christian at one point, and then he dealt with having testicular cancer, and then he grew up to marry Emma. It was one of like the best comic relief characters. I love Spinner. And the last big thing I have to mention is Rock This Town, and it's the saddest episode. It's the hardest I've ever cried ever. Cast table, when they all read through the script, they didn't know it was coming. You know, the actor didn't know it was coming, and they all had to like stop because they were sobbing because it was so sad. I think it was their junior year of high school. So by the time senior year comes around, after graduation, you see that there's a plaque made out to him, and he kind of gets to have his own moment at the graduation so that they all feel like they made it there together. Okay, so I've been talking for like ever. If you want me to talk more Degrassi, I haven't even really touched all my notes. I've just been rambling. If you like this topic, I need you to really do me a solid and drop that like, and then get in those comments and tell me that you want me to make more of these, because I'm telling you, I could talk about Degrassi for days. And then if you like watching me talk about TV shows and movies and all good things pop culture, do me a solid and subscribe. I hope you guys are staying safe. I've had a lot of fun. I can't wait to see you next time, and I'll catch you later. Bye. Very pivotable. Actually, Degrassi is kind of like that band Menudo. Also, Craig, Joey's dad. No, I said that backward. So since we're what was that? He really wants to fun little tidbit for you.